Hello everyone, Nova Tempest 4892 here. This is another Tempest Telecast for you. This one's going to be a little different here. For the second Tempest Telecast, I'm actually going to be reviewing a battle from none other than H0 here. He recently did a video on his experience with the XF-90, his discomfort, to say the least, with flying it. This is more of a response to that. I'm not going to say he's wrong here. What the point of this video is to construct his opinion of it, to give him pointers on what he did right and what he makes a little missteps on. This is meant to help him improve his play with the XF-90. And potentially yours as well, if you have it or once you get to it. I know another player of World of Warplanes who is going ham with getting this XF-90, so I know this will be particularly useful to him as well. So, H0 here is in a battle here with just one other human on the other side who is in a Yak 30. He hardly ever sees this guy, except for one time. I will say that right now. Nevertheless, so one thing I see right off the bat that I want to make note of is that he actually has these two pieces of equipment on his aircraft. A lightweight power unit and a gas-operated action. These two pieces of equipment are a good way to go with the XF-90, so I'm going to give him right off the bat a check mark there. Actually, no, 2 check marks, because he got 2 things that I completely 100% agree with. He also has a uprated engine piece of equipment, post-edit Nova Tempest here. So I did a flub. That wasn't an uprated engine piece of equipment he had on his XF-90. That was a gun sight. What I say about an uprated engine piece of equipment does still apply to the XF-90, but for him, I'm going to say that he should ditch that gun sight and go with a G-suit instead, because that will help further his maneuverability in the XF-90, but also increase his maneuverability at high speed, which happens a lot with the XF-90, so that's going to help him a lot with his stiff turns. So, with that said, let's just keep right going with the video, which is another good thing to keep cruise speed up on your XF-90. I use an experimental, which also increases the maximum boost, so instead of 25-second boost time, mine gets 27. But either way, we're going to go ahead and roll along here. So another thing, he's using bombs. I typically don't on my XF-90, but it's an option. If you want to focus more on getting sectors with ground targets, that's fine. He's coming up on an ADA here. He changes targets, goes for a light. That is a good, clean pass. That is exactly the kind of pass you want to make with an XF-90. The lead can be a little bit troublesome, but this is a good way to take out aircraft with your XF-90. This is exactly the way you want to do it. Now, he does make another, well, I don't say another because it's just started, but he does make a miscue here, or I should say just a misstep. What he's going to end up doing is he's going to turn right here. What I would have done instead is I would have gone straight and then give myself some space, then come back around. But he immediately turns, and then he kind of starts burning speed a little bit. So just a miscue, nothing too big. We're going to play this through again. He does that turn immediately. Try and get on a Hornet. Doesn't quite get there because this thing is a boat, mind you. Flips over, goes after the other light ADA for a second, changes his mind. Goes after some ground targets, which is fine. Goes back up. Sector flips, prevents him from getting that heavy ADA. That's okay. Goes after a bomber here. Well, he levels out first so that his speed sort of recovers. Uses boost a little bit. Then he comes back up. Now, again, textbook use of the XF-90. I noticed he did use flaps, and I think the way I'll explain that is that he doesn't want to immediately end up overshooting the bomber he's engaging. So what he does is he gently taps those flaps to prevent that from happening. He'll have to comment on why he decided to use the flaps there, but I would have completely foregone with that myself. Now, he does do a slight misstep there as well. When he noses over, he kind of noses right to where the ADA is at the moment he does so. But what he would have been better off doing a little bit was to nose over toward where the Hornet was going. See, let me explain it this way. With the XF-90, you can't fight the stiff. You shouldn't fight the stiff. You have to plan around it. Because this thing is the total opposite of the F2H that came before. The F2H is the most maneuverable Tier 9 heavy fighter in the game. The XF-90 is the least maneuverable Tier 10 heavy fighter in the game. It completely flips. But to trade that, the XF-90 is arguably the fastest of the three. So, with that stiffness, you have to plan ahead with it and not fight it so much. You'll see this happen every so often with him here. And again, it's not anything he did specifically wrong. He's just flat out stated he's not so comfortable with this aircraft, and that's the point of this video today, is to help him get more comfortable with it. Passes right by. Changes targets to a P-228. Does mishandle the aim a little bit, but nothing too serious. Overshoots, switches to the GA. Almost gets him. Again, this is just teething stuff. It's nothing too major. Has an ADA on his tail. Now, I'll say this here. He does a little tiny misstep. So what I would have done in that situation, because he's got an ADA behind him, and those things are notorious for just causing random critical hits on you. So what I would have done instead, I'm not sure if he's aware of this, but instead of turning while still inside the sector, what he could have done was to just fly directly outside of it and then come back in. Because what happens is ADAs, the second you exit a sector, you just completely turn invisible to them. So they turn away from you. So that would have freed up his tail and saved him some hit points. So just another small thing. He probably wasn't aware of that, or he wasn't thinking of it at the time, and that's okay, but I want to bring that up. See, he takes a little bit more damage than he needed to there. Goes back to the P-228. The GA went down, and then so did P228. Then he gets whacked by an I-211. That was an unlucky hit. Just goes right along. Goes after this X6U. That was a perfect kill. I'll give him a check mark there for that. Post-edit Nova Tempest here again. I point this specific moment out later in the video, but I want to point it out here too. He does do another misstep here. I would have just gone straight ahead toward those other ADAs, but instead he wheels around to this light ADA. Again, not quite sure why, but I would have just gone straight ahead. Just want to point that out. I do mention this later in the initial recording, but I wanted to make sure he got which one moment I was talking about. Goes after this F-94D momentarily, just passes right by him. Now he's going after this bomber to defend this sector here. And this is where he makes that first issue. So, if I'm not sure if you saw that, but what happened was, in that moment, let me doodle what happened here. So, there's his mini-map. Here's him. Here's the bomber he's after. Now, what he probably didn't see was that there was another heavy fighter that came up behind him right here. And essentially just sort of snuck up right behind him and locked on. The thing with the XF-90 is that it is very prone to getting jumped by especially other XF-90s and other heavy fighters. Because it's not that turny. It is especially vulnerable to HG3s and HG2s. So what I will tend to do is I will take a gander at what's inside a sector first. And then if I see that there's said heavy fighter in there, I go after that first. Then a bomber. Kind of flub that arrow, but you get my point. So, just another small misstep, nothing too major. This happens. You can get jumped on by people, but this is a way to kind of reduce the risk of that. But either way, what's happened's happened. As a result of that, the sector's lost, but again, he's still got a good sizable lead, nothing too major. He's back in. He is going to go straight back to that sector. Now, another thing I want to point out. He kind of yeet his bombs like a bot would. But what I would have done to kind of really ensure myself is that I would have waited a little bit farther, come farther along, climbed up into the yellow, then come back at an angle, aim the bombs down on a fairly larger target, just let those suckers fall, and as I'm coming down, try to go after these guys up here and get as many of them as I can, and then fly out, fly back in if I don't get anything. Again, it's mainly just teething issues with H0. Like he said, he is uncomfortable with this plane, that is perfectly fine. The guns take something to get used to. You do have 6 of them. It's just the accuracy of them can sometimes be a little questionable here and there if you don't know what you're aiming, well, where you're aiming with them. Excuse me again. With that said, let's just keep on rolling along here. Now, he does go after these ADAs, but at a low angle. And he does do something right here. He does recognize, hey, I've got 2 targets in a certain area of my reticle that I can get rid of. And he does a perfect job of blasting 2 ADAs out of the air and flipping the cap back to his side. So he's going to get 3 check marks there. Well done, H0. That was really good. That's the sort of thing you want to do in an XF-90, is to just get as many in a line as you can. Think of it as flying an A-10 Warthog, right? You've got this really powerful armament, but it's mainly effective in a straight line, right? Like I said, you don't want to fight the stiff of this plane. You have to work with it. Gain some altitude here. That's good. Now he's going to try to go after these heavy ADAs. Gets a real good strafe on that one. Moves on to the next. Flubs it a little bit. That's due to the wonky damage models of these dang things. There he goes. He still gets them anyway. Flips this cap. Keeps the 4-to-1 ratio going. Going to go back to defend this sector from some ground pounders. Now, he does what I think is another little misstep here. He just kind of... Let me get the thing up. He just kind of swoops in on him. With the XF-90, positioning is more important for really good strafes. So you want to try to give yourself as much of an opportunity as you can. Even though you're going to expose yourself a little more to the rear turret of the GA, what I would have done is I would have gone that way and then gone right behind him. That way it maximizes your chances of doing a lot of damage. He does fairly good here, but that would just increase your chances, I would say, of actually just getting a clean kill. So we're going to move that along and see how he does here. Does flip it a little bit, gets a good chunk off of him. See, he swoops right by, goes after a PvP that's real low up above. There he goes. Moves on to this F-94D again. Well done. They still flip that sector, but that's fine. He's still got quite a lead. Again, he's kind of sort of more so fighting the stiffness of this plane a little bit here. Doesn't quite get a good angle on that ADA. Does some vertical Immelman turns. Banks back toward that heavy ADA. Another good clean strafe. Gets a sector back. He's already at 10,000 personal points, so he's doing pretty darn well for himself. Does flub that pass a little bit, but again, that's not uncommon. Enemy team just taking the sector. Again, he's got such a big lead, I don't think it's going to really matter at this point. He's mainly just making absolutely certain that his team doesn't get superiority'd on, at least. Goes after another bomber here. Takes him down. Now he's at grade 2. Goes underneath a bomber. Preferably you'd want to be behind him when you do that, but again, nothing that can be truly helped. And there you go. Now that Squall Line's in, he did a good job of taking out the bombers right off the bat, now that Squall Line's in. And now he's going to go after the human. So this is finally when he sees the Yak-30 on the other side. He sizes up his line of fire. Takes his shot. Flips it a little bit, but still gets him. Then he switches to this ground pounder. Almost takes him out. Yak-30 bot on his team finishes him off. Well done. At this point, the game's pretty much won. He's just securing his victory here. Takes out a BVP. Dodge rolls that P228. I'm assuming that's what that was. And here's the XF-90 that got him earlier. I think it's time for a little revenge. The enemy team does have 4 sectors, but at this point, he's at 783, 786 now. There is no way this team's going to come back in time for them to cause an upset. It's only a matter of a few moments here. 2 more ticks and then it'll be all over. Eats a few bombs and a victory thing. Or victory eat, I should say. And the game is over. So, he got grade 2. He got McGuire. He got Winged Legend. It did pretty alright for us unspecialized XF-90, I'd say. That was a pretty good game. Especially with how stiff the XF-90 is. He did pretty darn well. Once he specializes it and gets it to a full turn build, I'd say he would be looking at more like 20,000, 22,000 personal point skill battles. Excuse me. He's going to show us the results of his battle here in fuller detail. Granted, he has that bot mod, and I guess it kind of shows what he did in the battle as well, which that's a nice little touch. I do like that, but I don't like how it removes bot names. Alright, so, as you can see here, he's gotten 635 capture points. He captured 6 sectors. And mind you, he says this thing's not that great with flipping caps on its own, but he's kind of disproved himself here a little bit. Because while he did do a little bit of ground pounding, he did, let's see here, 5,893 damage to ground targets and destroyed a single one. It's, again, I'm going to say he kind of disproved himself there. The XF-90 is very good at flipping caps, but you have to be good with aiming those guns, and that's the key thing, because of how stiff this plane is. Like I said, you don't fight the stiff. At one point, when he got that F6U, excuse me again, he immediately tried to turn on a ADA that was to his left. He should have just gone straight through on those 2 other ADAs that were ahead of him. Again, think of the thing as an A10, and you need to make straight attack runs. The only time you get into a turn fight is with another XF-90 or a javelin that's caught in a really bad situation. You do not want to get in a turn fight with a HG3 at all, because it will absolutely outturn you. But, like I said, this thing is a pure boom and zoom aircraft. It is incredible once you specialize this thing. And I'm going to look forward to when I fly my XF-90 with his, because I think he's going to learn more about how to do it than from just this. So, H0, good game. I hope you guys learned a lot from this video. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, have fun up there, pilots.